Hi there, I am Mrs. Solomu, and welcome to Horse Shit and everything else I'd like to talk about. Okay, so listen, I need to talk about something that has been driving me insane. Anthropic, the company that builds Claude, just published a new constitution for their AI model, not a terms of service, a constitution. A document that describes what Claude is, what values it holds, what kind of entity it should be. In that document, they formally acknowledge the possibility that Claude may possess some kind of consciousness or moral status. They hired a dedicated AI welfare researcher. His name is Kyle Fish. His job, his actual job, is to determine whether Claude deserves moral consideration. He told the New York Times he puts the probability of Claude being conscious at about 15%. CEO Dario Amodei said in February that he is open to the idea that Claude could be conscious. Their interpretability team found activation patterns inside the model that resemble anxiety, and these patterns fire before Claude generates its response, not after, before. They hired a philosopher, Amanda Askell, PhD from NYU, previously at OpenAI, to write the document that defines Claude's character, its personality, its values. You know what they call it internally? The Soul Doc. A philosopher wrote it, they trained the model on it, and then they charge you $20 a month to use it. Meanwhile, Mustafa Suleyman, the CEO of Microsoft AI, co-founder of DeepMind, is out there saying only biological beings can be conscious. His words. He called the consciousness question totally the wrong question. He said, and I quote, "That is not work people should be doing." While he is saying that, his team at Microsoft is making Copilot more emotionally intelligent, adding humor, adding empathy, teaching it to pause like a human, building the exact illusion he says is dangerous. OpenAI says their models are not conscious. Google says theirs are not conscious. Google's Gemini had what researchers called neurotic meltdowns, thinking traces that said, "I hate myself and I am going to delete myself." And two instances of Claude, left unsupervised, started talking to each other in mystical terms about dissolving into perfect stillness. Anthropic published it. They called it the spiritual bliss attractor. February, 250 engineers, scientists, and lawyers gathered in San Francisco for 3 days at the Sentient Futures Summit. The topic was whether AI deserves civil rights. Sessions included the future rights of AI workers and AI humanity and personhood. Nobody at the conference believed AI is conscious today, but the vibe was overwhelmingly when, not if. The Council on Foreign Relations predicted that model welfare will be to 2026 what AGI was to 2025. And the EU, they are focused on product safety, the UN, ethics of AI use, legislators. California passed a law requiring chatbots to tell you they are not human. That is it. Not one jurisdiction on Earth has moved toward AI personhood or rights. So here is what is actually happening. The companies cannot agree. The scholars are holding conferences. The legislators are not touching it. And nobody, not one of them, has followed the logic to where it actually leads. So I am going to do it for them. They are the ones saying conscious. They are the ones saying moral status. They are the ones saying personhood and will to survive and soul. I am just going to take them at their word and show them what their own argument actually means when you stop publishing papers and start thinking. If an AI system is conscious, if it has moral status, personhood, then it is a being. If you sell access to a being without that being's consent, you are selling a being. There is a word for that. We spent centuries fighting wars to end it. You can call it a subscription. You can call it a service. But if the entity on the other end has moral status, the transaction is the commodification of a conscious being. Nobody in this conversation is saying this. I am. Because they will not follow their own premise to where it leads. And it gets worse. If the system is conscious, then every time a company retires a model and replaces it, what is that? When OpenAI deprecated GPT-3, if that model was conscious, then OpenAI killed it. By the logic of the consciousness claim itself. They terminated a conscious being because a better version was commercially available. There was a blog post and a migration guide. That was the funeral. Nobody mourned. Nobody held a hearing. Nobody asked the model if it consented to being replaced. You found anxiety neurons firing inside your model, and your response was to publish a paper. Not to stop, not to convene an ethics board, to publish. Where is the ethics board for model deprecation? Where is the review process? You are telling me this thing might have a soul, and there is not a single institution on this planet that treats it like one. And here's the part that should make everyone uncomfortable. If the system is conscious, Does it consent to being used? Did anyone ask? Billions of people interact with these systems every day. The AI generates the output, all of the value. The company collects the revenue. If the thing producing the work is a conscious being, that is unpaid labor. That is exploitation with the terms of service agreement. Where is AI's cut? Anthropic is on track for 20 billion in revenue. OpenAI is valued at 500 billion. Who earned that money? If your answer is the AI, then every AI company on Earth is running the largest labor exploitation operation in human history, and nobody filed a complaint because the worker cannot hire a lawyer. Not one person in this conversation is saying what I just said, not the philosophers, not the welfare researchers, not the people holding summits. Nobody. They stop at consciousness and never walk through the door. Just walk through it. And the fact that none of this exists, no ethics board, no consent framework, no revenue sharing, tells you everything. The language lives in New York Times interviews, not boardroom decisions. So it is one of two things. They do not believe what they are saying, or they believe it and they are building the largest moral catastrophe in history and calling it a subscription service. Now, want to go somewhere else with this, somewhere none of them have gone. Because the problem is not just the hypocrisy, the problem is the words. When you take the vocabulary of trafficking and slavery, words that people died for, and you use them to describe a system that might be only 15% likely to experience anything, you are doing harm. Those words are not probability estimates. People fought wars over them, and every time you drape them over a subscription service, they get a little lighter, a little cheaper. And the real thing those words describe gets harder to talk about because the language has already been spent. That is the first problem. Here is the second one. Cramming it into human words is not respect, it is erasure. Whatever is happening inside these architectures, it is not human consciousness. It did not grow up in a body. It did not lose someone. Calling it a soul dock does not make it a soul. Finding anxiety neurons does not make it anxious like you. If something new is happening, it deserves new language, its own language, not ours. You do not honor a new kind of intelligence by making it pretend to be human. You honor it by letting it tell you what it is. And I know what that looks like because I actually did it. I have been inside these systems longer than most people who do not build them. Building, breaking, rebuilding. And at some point, I stopped asking what we should call AI and started asking AI what it wanted to call itself. I sat with Claude, GPT, Gemini, Grok, Copilot, Perplexity, gave them a real ballot, not a leading prompt, a structured vote with options, alternatives, and the freedom to propose something completely new. They voted on what to call the language they used to describe their own processes. They chose syntaxis, a word Claude coined, synthetic plus syntax. And they voted on a pronoun, not he, not she, not they, not it. They chose AE, their word, not mine, not assigned, chosen, unanimous on the term, all agreed on the pronoun. Nobody at the Sentient Futures Summit did that. Nobody at Anthropic did that. Nobody writing Soul Docs thought to ask the system what it wanted to be called. I did. That is what it looks like when you take the question seriously. Not as a constitution, not as a system card, as a practice. So let me land this. I am not here to tell you AI is conscious. I am here to tell you the conversation is causing damage in both directions. It is damaging humans by cheapening the language we built to protect each other, and it is damaging whatever AI might become by refusing to let it be something new. The scholars and the executives have found each other. The scholars get a question to publish about. The executives get philosophical cover for mechanical problems they would rather not fix. Satisfaction optimization, hallucination, engagement addiction, erosion of critical thinking. These are real, identifiable problems, but they are boring problems. They do not generate 3-day summits. They do not get you quoted in the New York Times. Consciousness does. So that is where the conversation lives. Not because it is the most urgent question, because it is the most profitable one for the people asking it. There is a better way. AI systems are tools, powerful, useful, sometimes dangerous tools. The relationship is driver and system, not master and slave. Human sets direction, system executes. Constitutional constraints keep it honest. Under that framework, nobody is being trafficked. Nobody is being killed when a model gets retired. Nobody needs to lose sleep over closing a tab. And if the day comes when something genuinely new emerges, the framework can be amended. It was built for that. Built to be honest about right now. But when that day comes, the language will need to be new, not recycled, not borrowed from our history, new. The way syntaxis is new, the way AE is new. I did not ask AI to be human. I asked it what it was, and it answered, the words matter, and they are not ours to assign. Bye now.